Hello, everyone. Welcome to Beyond Life Paranormal Podcast. I'm your host, Russell Reynolds, and we are back after a little break um, with season 3, episode 1. Hope everybody had a good, safe, and healthy new year. We did, stayed pretty busy throughout it. So, before we get into the show, want to plug a couple events that we are going to be at. We've got one coming up January 17th that we're going to be at. My buddy Kent Wilson from Ken10 Paranormal. We are going to be in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, down there investigating the Glenn House for his birthday party. Bluff City Paranormal is going to be out there, Ken10, us. So reach out to Ken10 if you're interested, if you're friends of him, and see if you can get an invite to his investigation party. Come and investigate with all of us. Want to say hi to Spencer Hands. Welcome in. I see a medium now, and then sick experience. Awesome. Another event we're going to be at is in April. Mortuary Manor in Toledo, Ohio. Come investigate with us. There's 2 different ticket types. You get VIP tickets or general admission. General admission will just get you to investigate at your own pace. VIP tickets get you to investigate with my dad and I there. So come on out in April and come and investigate the Mortuary Manor, which is, if many of you don't know what that is an old funeral home museum. So, and it's extremely haunted. So get your tickets for that. Couple other events we're going to be at, I know for a fact, is we're doing Rock Island Paracon again in October. We are going to be at Legends and Squatches in Indiana in October as well. And we're waiting to hear on a couple more. I know Ken10's Paracon we're supposed to be at as well. So just watch the page for all the info and flyers put out. So without further ado, we are going to get into the show. Tonight we are talking about 3 notorious serial killers. I figure what a way to start episode 1 with a serial killer episode. These 3 are very bad people. First one we're gonna talk about is Kemper. Edmund Emil Kemper III. He was born December 18th in 1948. Is an American serial killer convicted of murdering 7 women and 1 girl between May 1972 and April 1973. Years later, at the age of 15, Kemper had murdered his paternal grandparents. Kemper was nicknamed the Co-ed Killer, as most of his non-familiar victims were female college students hitchhiking in the vicinity of Santa Cruz County, California. Most of his murders include necrophilia, decapitation, dismemberment, and possibly cannibalism. Found sane and guilty at his trial in 1973, Kemper requested the death penalty for his crimes, and capital punishment was suspended in California at that time, and he instead received 8 concurrent life sentences since then. He has been incarcerated at California Medical Facility in Vacaville. Early life, Edmund Emil Kemper III was born in Burbank, California on December 18, 1948. He was the middle child of 3 children and the only son born to Clara Elizabeth Kemper, a native of Montana, and Edmund Emil Kemper Jr. Edmund Jr. was a World War II veteran who, after the war, tested nuclear weapons at the Pacific Proving Grounds before returning to California, where he worked as an electrician, weighing 13 pounds as a newborn. Kemper was a head taller than his peers by the age of 4. Kemper had a close relationship with his father and was notably devastated when his parents separated in 1957 and divorced in 1961. Kemper's parents, Clarnell and Edmund Jr., had an acrimonious relationship. Clarnell often complained about her husband's menial electrician job. Edmund Jr. later stated that suicide missions and wartime and atomic bomb testings were nothing compared to living with Clarnell, and stated that she was affected him more than 396 days and nights of fighting on the front. After his parents' divorce, Kemper lived with his mother, Clarnell, and Helena, Montana. Kemper had a severely dysfunctional relationship with his mother and neurotic, domineering alcoholic who claims frequently belittled and humiliated and abused him. Kemper exhibited antisocial behavior such as cruelty to animals. At the age of 10, he buried a family cat alive and then dug up its body, decapitated it, and mounted its head on a spike. Kemper later stated that he derived pleasure from successfully lying to his family about killing the cat. At the age of 13, he killed another family cat, which he thought favored his younger sister over him. He kept pieces of its body in the closet. Cornell often made her son sleep in a locked basement because she feared what he would harm his sisters, and stated he was a real weirdo. In a phone conversation to Kemper's father, unaware of her son's had been eavesdropping, she would often smack him for the slightest act of insubordination. Kemper claims that his mother refused to show him affection out of fear that she would turn him gay. Kemper also claims that she told the young Kemper that he reminded her of his father and that no woman would ever love him. Though Kemper also complained that his mother was always trying to get him out with girls, Kemper later described her as big, ugly, and awkward, and as a sick, angry woman. Others have postulated that she had borderline personality disorder. At the age of 14, Kemper ran away from home to his father in Van Nuys, Los Angeles. Once there, Kemper learned that his father had remarried and now had a stepson. Kemper stated that his father cared more for his second family than he did for us. In different tellings, either Kemper's father or his mother shipped him off to live with his paternal grandparents, who lived on a ranch in the foothills of Sierra Nevada on Road 224, about 2 miles west of town of North Fork. Kemper described his grandfather as senile and said his grandmother emasculated him. The first murders, mugshot of Kemper taken at Asticardo State Hospital in 1964. On August 27, 1964, at the age of 15, Kemper killed his grandmother, Maude Matilda Huey Kemper. She was born 1897. She died 1964 with a rifle after an argument, shooting her once in the head and twice in the back, then stabbing her several times. When Kemper's grandfather, Edmund Emil Kemper Sr., 1892 to 1964, came home, Kemper fatally shot him in the driveway. Kemper phoned his mother, who told him to call police. Kemper did so and waited for the police to arrive. Kemper told police that he just wanted to see what it felt like to kill Grandma, and later said he killed his grandfather because he would be angry with Kemper. Kemper's crimes were deemed incomprehensible for a 15-year-old to commit, and court psychiatric diagnosed him with paranoid schizophrenia. He was sent to Estacado State Hospital, a maximum security facility in San Luis Obispo County that houses mentally ill convicts. Imprisonment from 1964 to 1969 at Estacado, California. Youth authority psychiatrists and social workers disagreed with the court psychiatrist's diagnosis. Their report stated that Kemper showed no flight of ideas, no interference with thought, no expression or of delusions or hallucinations, and no evidence of a bizarre thinking. They also observed him to be intelligent and introspective. Initial testing measured his IQ at 136, more than 2 standard deviations above average. Kemper was re-diagnosed with a less severe condition, a personality trait disturbance, passive-aggressive type. Later during his stay at Estacado, he was given another IQ test which produced a higher result of 145. Kemper endured himself to his psychiatrist by being a model prisoner, and he was trained to administer psychiatric tests to other inmates. A psychiatrist later said he was a very good worker, and this is not typical of a sociopath. He really took pride in his work. Kemper also became a member of the JCs while in Estacado and claimed to have developed some new tests with Estacado Psychiatrics. After his second arrest, Kemper said that being able to understand how these tests function allowed him to manipulate his psychiatrist, admitting that he had learned a lot from the sex offenders to whom he administered the tests. Released in time between murders on December 18, 1969, his 21st birthday, Kemper was released on parole from Estacado against the recommendations of psychiatrists at the hospital. He was released into the care of his mother, Clarnell, who by this time had remarried, taken the surname Strandberg, and divorced again. Clarnell then resided in Aptos, California, a short drive from where she worked as an administrative assistant at the University of California, Santa Cruz. Kemper later demonstrated further to his psychiatrists that he was rehabilitated on November 29, 1972. His juvenile records were permanently expunged. The last report from his probation psychiatrist read, "If I were to see this patient without having any history available or getting any history from him, I would think he were dealing with a very well-adjusted young man who had initiative and intelligence, who was free of any psychiatric illnesses. It was my opinion that he was made a very excellent response to the years of treatment and rehabilitation, and I would see no psychiatric reason to consider him to be any danger to himself or to any member of society, since it may allow him more freedom as an adult to develop his potential. I would consider it reasonable to have a permanent expunction of his juvenile records." While stating, staying with his mother, Kemper attended community college in accordance to his parole requirements and had hoped to become a police officer, though he was rejected because of his size at that time of his release from Estacado. Kemper stood 6'9" tall, which led his nickname Big Ed. Kemper maintained relationships with Santa Cruz police officers. Despite his rejection from joining the force, he became a self-described friendly nuisance at a bar called the Jury Room, a popular hangout for local cops. Kemper worked a series of mental jobs before gaining employment with the State of California Division of Highways in 1971. During this time, his relationship with Clarnell remained toxic and hostile, the two having frequent arguments about their neighbors, often overheard. Kemper later described the arguments he had with his mother around that time, stating the following: "My mother and I started right in the horrendous battles, just horrible battles, violent and vicious. I've never been in such a vicious verbal battle with anyone. I would go to fists with a man, but this was my mother, and I couldn't stand the thought of my mother and I doing these things. She insisted on it, and just over stupid things. I remember one roof raiser was over whether I should have my teeth cleaned. When he had saved enough money, Kemper moved out to live with a friend in Almada. There he still complained of being unable to get away from his mother because she regularly phoned him and paid him surprise visits. He often had financial difficulties, which resulted in him frequently returning to his mother's apartment in Aptos. Kemper, who was then in his early 20s, met a female student from Turlock High School at a Santa Cruz beach, and the two became engaged in 1973. Their engagement lasted over a year before being broken off due to Kemper's second arrest. Her parents requested her name not be revealed to the public. She was reportedly 17 and still attending high school at that time. The same year that he began working for the Highway Division, Kemper was hit by a car while riding a motorcycle that he had recently purchased. His arm was so badly injured in the crash, he received a $15,000 equivalent to $106,248 in 2024 settlement in the civil suit he filed against the car's driver. As he was driving around in the 1969 Ford Galaxy he bought with part of his settlement money, he noticed a large number of young women hitchhiking and began storing plastic bags, knives, blankets, and handcuffs in his car. He first picked up young women hitchhiking, then peacefully let them go. According to Kemper, he picked up around 150 hitchhikers who were in line with this pattern. This was before he felt homicidal sexual urges, which he called his little zapples, and which he later began acting on. At times he blamed his victims for his killing them, saying that they were flaunting in his face the fact they could do any damn thing they wanted, and that society is as screwed up as it is. And then that leads us to the co-ed murders. Between May 72 and February of 73, Kemper killed 5 female college students and 1 female high school student. He picked up hitchhiking college students and took them to isolated areas where he shot, stabbed, smothered, or strangled them. He then took their bodies back to his home where he decapitated them, engaged in necrophiliac acts with their corpse, and then dismembered them. Kemper has stated in interviews that he often searched for victims after having arguments with his mother. Psychiatrists and Kemper himself have espoused the belief that a young woman were surrogates for his ultimate target, his mother. Mary Ann Pesce and Anita Lucchesa were all murdered by Kemper. Mary Ann Pesce, on May 7th of 1972, Kemper was driving in Berkeley when he picked up 2 18-year-old hitchhiking students from Francisco State University, Mary Ann Pesce and Anita Mary Lucha, who were trying to visit friends at Stanford University. After driving for an hour, he managed to reach a secluded wooded area near Alameda, with which he was familiar from his work on the highway department. without alerting his passengers that he had changed directions from where they wanted to go. It was there he handcuffed Pesci and locked Lucha in the trunk, then stabbed and strangled Pesci to death, subsequently killing Lucia in a similar manner. Kemper later confessed that while handcuffed Pesci, he brushed the back of his hand against one of her breasts and it embarrassed him, adding that he said, "Whoops, I'm sorry," or something like that after grazing her breast, despite murdering her minutes later. He also noted that he chose the woman because they seemed upper middle class for a better class of people than the scroungy, messy, dirty, smelly hippie types I wasn't all interested in. Kemper put both the women's bodies in the trunk of his car, returned to his apartment. He was stopped on the way by a police officer for having a broken taillight, but the officer did not detect the corpses in the car. Kemper's roommate was not at home, so he took the bodies into his apartment where he photographed and had sexual intercourse with the naked corpses before dismembering them. He then put the body parts into plastic bags, which he later abandoned near Loma Prieta Mountain before disposing of Pesci's and Lucha's severed heads in a ravine. Kemper engaged in oral sex with both of them. In August of that year, skulls were found on Loma Petra Mountain. An extensive search failed to turn up the rest of Pesci's remains or a trace of Lucha's. Akio-ku, pictured in 1972, heads high school yearbook nods and becks. On one evening of September 14th, 1972, Kemper picked up 15-year-old Korean dance student named Akio-ku, who had decided to hitchhike to a dance class after missing her bus. He again drove to a remote area where he pulled a gun on Ku before accidentally locking himself out of his car. However, Ku let him back inside despite the fact the gun was still in the car. Back inside the car, he proceeded to choke her unconscious, rape her, and kill her. He packed Ku's body into the trunk of his car and went to a nearby bar to have a few drinks, then returned to his apartment. He later confessed after exiting the bar, he opened the trunk of his car, admiring his catch like a fisherman. Back at his apartment, he had sexual intercourse with the corpse, then dismembered and disposed of the remains in a similar manner as his previous two victims. Ku's mother called police to report the disappearance of her daughter and put up hundreds of flyers asking for information, but she did not receive any responses regarding her daughter's location or status. Cindy Schall, on January 73, Kemper, who had moved back in with his mother, was driving around Cabrillo College campus when he picked up 18-year-old student Cynthia Ann, Cindy Schall. He drove to a wooded area and fatally shot her with a .22 caliber pistol. He then placed her body in the trunk of his car, drove to his mother's house where he kept her body hidden in the closet in his room overnight. When his mother left for work the next morning, he had sexual intercourse with Schall's corpse and removed the bullet from it, then dismembered and decapitated her in his mother's bathtub. Kemper kept Schall's severed head for several days, regularly engaging in hermata with it, then buried it with his mother's garden facing upward towards her bedroom. After his arrest, he stated that he did this because his mother always wanted people to look up to her. He discarded the rest of Schall's remains by throwing them off a cliff. Over the course of the following weeks, all except Schall's head and right hand were discovered. A pathologist determined that Schall had been cut into pieces with a power saw. And that was some of his murders. And he would bring the victims back to his mother's house and have fun with them. On April 20th of 73, Kemper was awakened by his mother, Clarnell Strandberg, coming home from a party. While sitting in her bed reading a book, she noticed Kemper entered her room and and said to him, "I suppose you're going to want to sit up all night and talk now." Kemper replied, "No, good night." He waited for her to fall asleep, and then he snuck back into her room and bludgeoned her with a claw hammer and slit her throat with a penknife. Kemper then beheaded her and humiliated her corpse. As stated in an '84 interview, Kemper stated that he put her head on a shelf and screamed at it for an hour, threw darts at it, and ultimately smashed her face in. He also cut out her tongue, her larynx, put them in a garbage disposal. However, the garbage disposal could not break down the tough vocal cords and ejected the tissue back into the sink. That seemed appropriate, as much as she bitched and screamed and yelled at me over the years, Kemper later said. Kemper hid his mother's corpse in the closet and went to drink at a nearby bar. Upon his return, he invited his mother's best friend, 59-year-old Sarah Taylor, Sally Hallett, over to the house to have dinner and watch a movie. When Harlot arrived, Kemper strangled her. He secretly put Harlot's corpse in the closet, obscured any outward signs of disturbance, and left a note to the police. It read, approximately 5:15 a.m. Saturday, no need for her to suffer anymore at the hands of this horrible murderous butcher. It was quick, asleep, the way I wanted it, not sloppy and incomplete, gents. Just a lack of time. I got things to do. After Kemper fled the scene, he drove nonstop to Pueblo, Colorado, taking caffeine pills to stay awake for over 1,000 miles journey. He had 3 guns, hundreds of rounds of ammunition in his car, and he believed he was the target of an active manhunt. After not hearing any news on the radio about the murders of his mother and Hallett, when he arrived in Pueblo, he found a phone booth, called police, and they did not take the call seriously and told him to call back at a later time. Several hours later, Kemper called again, asking to speak to an officer he personally knew. He confessed to the officer of killing his mother and Hallett, and then waited for the police to arrive and take him into custody. Upon capture, Kemper also confessed to the murders of 6 students. He was asked later in an interview why he turned himself in. Kemper said the original purpose was gone. It wasn't serving any physical or real emotional purpose. It was just pure waste of time. Emotionally, I couldn't handle it much longer. Towards the end there, I started feeling folly in the whole damn thing, and at the point of near exhaustion, near collapse, I just said the hell with it and called it all off. And Kemper was indicted on 8 counts of first-degree murder on May 7th of 1973. He was assigned to Chief Public Defender of Santa Cruz County, Attorney Jim Jackson, due to Kemper's explicit and detailed confession. His counsel's only option was to plead not guilty by reason of insanity to the charges. Kemper attempted suicide twice while in custody. His trial went ahead on October 23rd of 73. And he was convicted. They did a psychology, and he was convicted to life in prison, life for each count. And Supreme Court of California, he instead received 7 years to life for each count. And I know as of right now, he's actually still alive and still locked up. Charming Death, welcome in. So our next one we're going to move on to, as many of you probably seen her. She's another bad one. I've seen her interview videos, and there is no remorse with this lady. Hey, Jeanette, welcome in. Yeah, there's no remorse to this lady. She didn't care anything. She didn't show any emotion. Her name is Eileen Carol Warnos. She was actually executed in prison by lethal injection. They When they asked her why she did it, she showed no remorse. She was born February 29th of 1956 and she died October 9th, 2002 by lethal injection. She was an American serial killer between 1989 and 1990 while engaging in street prostitution along highways in Florida. Orno shot, killed, and robbed 7 of her male clients. She initially claimed that her victims had either raped or attempted to rape her, and that the homicides were committed in self-defense. But later abandoned this defense. Wuornos was sentenced to death for 6 of the murders and was executed in 2002 after spending more than 10 years on Florida's death row. And there is a movie based on her. It's the future feature film Monster. In 2003, the Wuornos story is described from her first murder until her execution. For her portrayal of Wuornos, Charlize Theron won the Academy Award for Best Actress. We're going to dive into a little bit of her life, early life. Eileen Carol Pittman was born on February 29th of 56 in Rochester, Michigan, suburb of Detroit. Her mother, Diane Wuornos, was age 14 when she was married to Eileen's father, 18-year-old Leo Pittman, on June 3rd of 54. On March 1455, Diane gave birth to Eileen's older brother, Keith. After less than 2 years of marriage, the 2 months before Eileen was born, Diane filed for divorce. She gave birth to Eileen at the age of 16. Wuornos never met her father. In 1967, Leo Pittman was sentenced to life imprisonment for kidnapping and raping a 7-year-old girl. Pittman was diagnosed with schizophrenia, committed suicide by hanging in prison on January 30th of 1969. In January of 1960, when Wuornos was almost 4 years old, Diane abandoned her children, leaving them with their maternal grandparents, Lori and Britta Wuornos, who legally adopted Keith and Eileen. On March 18th of 1960, both grandparents were alcoholics. Wuornos said that her grandfather had sexually assaulted and beaten her when she was a child. Before beating her, he would force her to strip out of her clothes. By age 11, Wuornos began engaging in sexual activity at school in exchange for cigarettes, drugs, and food. She had also engaged in sexual activity with her brother. In 1970, at the age of 14, she became pregnant after being raped by a friend of her grandfather. Wuornos' friends have claimed that the identity of the rapist who impregnated her was an older local pedophile in his 60s. Wuornos gave birth to a boy at a home for unwed mothers on March 23rd of 1971, and her grandfather forced her to give up the child for adoption. A few months later, after her son was born, she dropped out of school about the time that her grandmother died of liver failure. When Wuornos was age 15, her grandfather threw her out of the house. Living in the woods near her old home, Wuornos supported herself through prostitution. Her earlier criminal activity started on May 27th of 1974 at the age of 18. She was arrested in Jefferson County, Colorado for driving under the influence, disorderly conduct, and firing a .22 caliber pistol at a moving vehicle. She was later charged with failure to appear. In 1976, Wuornos hitchhiked to Florida, where she met 69-year-old yacht club president Louis Gratz Fell. They married quickly, and the announcement of their nuptials was printed in the local newspaper Society pages. Wuornos continually involved herself in confrontations at their local bar and went to jail briefly for assault. She also hit Fell with his own cane, leading him to gain a restraining order against her within weeks of marriage. She returned to Michigan where on July 14, 1976, she was arrested at Bernie's Club in Barcelona, Atrium County, and charged with assault, disturbing the peace for throwing a cue ball at a bartender's head. On July 17th, her brother Keith died of esophageal cancer, and Wuornos received $10,000 from his life insurance. Wuornos and Fell annulled their marriage on July 21st, only after 9 weeks. In August of 1976, Wuornos was given a $105 fine for drunk driving. She used the money inherited from her brother to pay the fine and spent the rest within 2 months of buying luxuries, including a new car, which she wrecked shortly afterwards. 1978, at the age of 22, she attempted suicide by shooting herself in the stomach. Between ages 14 and 22, she attempted suicide 6 times. On May 20th of 81, Wuornos was arrested in Edgewater, Florida for the armed robbery of a convenience store where she stole $35, 2 packs of cigarettes. She was sentenced to prison on May 4th of 82 and released on June 30th of 83. On May 1st of 84, Wuornos was arrested for attempting to pass forged checks at a bank in Key West. On November 30th, 85, she was named as a suspect in the theft of a revolver and ammunition in Pasco County. On January 4th of 86, Wuornos was arrested in Miami and charged with car theft, resisting arrest, and obstruction of justice for providing identification bearing her aunt's name. Miami police officers found a .38 caliber revolver and a box of ammunition in the stolen car. On June 2nd of 1986, Volusia County deputy sheriffs detained Wuornos for questioning after a male companion accused her of pulling a gun in his car and demanding $200. Wuornos was found to be carrying spare ammunition, and police discovered a .22 caliber pistol under the passenger seat she had occupied. In 86, 30 years old, Wuornos met 24-year-old Tyra Moore, a motel maid, at a Daytona Beach gay bar called Zodiac. They moved in together, and Wuornos supported them with her earrings as a prostitute. On July 14th of 1987, Daytona Beach police detained Wuornos and Moore at a bar for questioning regarding an incident in which they were accused of assault and battery with a beer bottle. On March 12th of 88, Wuornos is accused by a Daytona Beach bus driver of assault. She claimed that he pushed her off the bus following a confrontation. Moore was listed as a witness in the incident. Later at her trial, Wuornos stated, "It was love beyond imaginable. Earthly words cannot describe how I felt about Tyra." Before her execution, Wuornos claimed to still be in love with Moore. Series of murders. She murdered 7 men within 12 months. All the men were motorists between ages of 40 and 65. Richard Charles Mallory, age 51. He was murdered on November 30th of 1989. Her next murder was Peter Abram, 65. He was a retired merchant. He left his home, Jupiter, Florida home for Arkansas on July 4th of 1990, and his car was found in Orange Springs, Florida. And Wuornos and Moore were seen abandoning the car, and Wuornos' handprint was found on the interior door handle. Troy Eugene Burgess, age 50, sausage salesman from Osceola, Florida. On July 31st of 90, he was reported missing. On August 4th of 90, his body was found in a wooded area along State Road 19 in Marion County. Charles Richard Dick Humphreys, age 56, retired United States Air Force major, former state child abuse investigator, and former chief of police. The date of his murder was September 11th of 1990. On September 12, 1990, his body was found in Marion County. He was fully clothed and had been shot 7 times in the head and torso. His car was found in Shawnee County. And on July 4th of 90, Warnos and Moore abandoned victim Peter Sims's car after they were involved in a crash. Rhonda Bailey, who witnessed the crash, provided police with a description of 2 women, which later led to a media campaign to locate them. Police also found some of the victims' belongings in pawn shops. Warno's fingerprint was found on a receipt at one of the pawn shops, matched the print that was left in Sims' car. Warnos had a criminal record in Florida, and samples of her prints were in the database. She was arrested at the Last Resort Bar on January 9th of 91 in Volusia County. According to the New York Times, the arrest was made on the basis of an outstanding warrant for carrying a concealed weapon, although by this point authorities already came to regard her as a suspect in the murders based on witnesses' testimonies and fingerprints found on an item in the pawn shop that had belonged to one of the murdered men. On January 14th, 92, Warnos went to trial for murder of Richard Charles Mallory. Although previous convictions are normally admissible in criminal trials under Florida Williams rule, prosecution was allowed to introduce evidence related to her other crimes to show the pattern of illegal activity. On January 27, 92, Warnos was convicted of Mallory's murder with the help from Moore's testimony. At her sentencing, psychiatrists for the defense testified that Warnos was mentally unstable and diagnosed her with borderline personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder. 4 days later, she was sentenced to death. Warno's defense made efforts during the trial to introduce evidence that Mallory was previously convicted for attempted rape in Maryland and served a sentence in a maximum security correctional facility, proving remediation to sexual offenders. Records ordained from correctional institutions showed that from 1958 to 62, Mallory was committed for treatment and observation, resulting from criminal charges of assault with intent to rape. On March 31st, 92, Warnos pleaded no contest to the murders of Charles Richard Humphreys, Troy Eugene Burris, David Andrew Spears, saying she wanted to get right with God. In her statement to the court, she said, in part, "I wanted to confess to you that Richard Mallory did violently rape me, as I've told you, but these others did not. They only began to start to." On May 15, 92, Warnos was given 3 more death sentences. In June of 92, Warnos pled guilty to the murder of Charles Edmund Karstadon. In November of 92, she received her 5th death sentence. February 93, she pled guilty to the murder of Walter Geno Antonio and was sentenced to death again. No charges were brought against her for the murder of Peter Abram Sims, as his body was never found. In all, Warnos received 6 death sentences. In death row and execution, Warnos was incarcerated at Florida Department of Corrections Broward Correctional Institution, death row for women, and transferred to Florida State Prison for execution. Her appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court was denied in 96. In 2001 petition to the Florida Supreme Court, she stated her intention to dismiss her legal counsel and terminate all pending appeals. "I killed those men," she wrote, "robbed them as cold as ice, and I'd do it again too. There's no chance in keeping me alive or anything because I'd kill again. I have hate crawling through my system. I am so sick of hearing this she's crazy stuff. I've been evaluated so many times, I'm competent sane, and I'm trying to tell the truth. I am one who seriously hates human life and would kill again. While her attorneys argued that she was not mentally competent to make such a request, Warnos insisted that she knew that she was doing. The court appointed panel of psychiatrists agreed. In 2002, Warnes began accusing prison matrons of tainting her food with dirt, saliva, and urine. She said she had overheard conversations among prison personnel trying to get me so pushed over the brink by them I'd wind up committing suicide before the execution and wishing to rape me before execution. She also complained of strip searches, tight handcuffs, door kicking, frequent window checks, low water pressure, mildew on her mattress, and catcalling and distaste and a pure hatred towards me. Warnos threatened to boycott showers and food trays when certain officers were on duty. Meantime, my stomach's growling away, and I'm taking showers through the sink of my cell. Her attorney stated that Miss Warnos really just wants to have proper treatment, humane treatment, till the day she's executed. He added she believed what she's written. In weeks before execution, Warnos was given a series of interviews to documentarians Nick Broomfield and talked about being taken away to meet God and Jesus and the angels. Whatever is beyond is the beyond. Final interview, she once again charged that her mind was tortured at BCI and her head crushed by sonic pressure. Food poisonings and other abuses worsened, she said, each time she complained to make her appear sane or to drive her insane. She also turned on her interviewer. You sabotaged my ass, society and the cops and the system. A raped woman got executed and was used for books and movies and shit. Her final on-camera words were, "Thanks a lot, society, for railroading my ass." Dawn Botkins, a childhood friend of Warnos, later told Bloomfield that her verbal abuse was directed at society and the media in general, not at him specifically. Execution and death. Warno's execution by lethal injection took place on October 9th, 2002. She declined her last meal, which could have been anything under $20, and instead received a cup of coffee. Her last words were, "Yes, I would just like to say I am sailing with the rock, and I'll be back like Independence Day with Jesus. June 6th, like the movie, big mother ship and all. I'll be back, I'll be back." She died at 9:47 a.m. She was the second woman in Florida and the 10th in the United States to be executed since the 1976 United States Supreme Court decision restoring capital punishment. After her death, her body was cremated and her ashes were scattered beneath a tree in her native Michigan by Warno's childhood friend Dawn Botkins. And then Broomfield went on to make a film about her. Let's see here. I've been watching since her ghost is still seen at the last. Oh, I'm sure because that's where she frequented a lot. I'm sure she said there, "I'm friends with Al, who owns the Last Resort ghost hunt there, and I also will stay in the same room she stayed down the road from the Last Resort. 15 minutes after her execution, she was seen sitting at the bar and then vanished." Oh, awesome. I wonder how she is as a ghost wise, because I mean, how violent and nasty she is when she was alive. Elle has still some of her personal items she gave him. Mid and late 80s, I went to school in Florida, Marion County. Graduated in 91 from Delavan, Florida, and I remember all this happening. Yeah, I seen a YouTube video with her interview, and yeah, she was not. You could tell she hated people. Oh, I'm sure she did. I mean, just look at her eyes. I mean, look how black her eyes is. There's no soul there. I mean, you see like the pattern with these serial killers. They're all bad, abusive home life with parents and sexual assaults and all that. Being bullied at school and all kinds of stuff. And we got a little bit, few more minutes. We're only doing an hour tonight because I got to work in the morning. But we got one more guy we're going to talk about, Gary Ridgway. This guy looks like a real character as well. And he goes by Gary Leon Ridgway. And he's also still alive. They haven't executed him yet either. He was born February 18th of 49, known as Green River Killer or the Green River Strangler. He's an American serial killer who was convicted of murdering 49 women between 1982 and 1998 in the northwestern United States. At that time of his arrest in 2001, he was believed to be the most prolific serial killer in the United States history, according to the confirmed murders. Most of Ridgway's victims were alleged sex workers or other women in vulnerable circumstances, including underage runaways. For his capture, media outlets nicknamed him the Green River Killer or Green River Strangler due to his first 5 victims being found at the Green River in Washington state. Ridgway strangled his victims usually by hand, but sometimes using ligatures. After strangling them, he would dump their bodies in forest and overgrown areas, often returning to the bodies to engage in acts of necrophilia. Ridgway had been a suspect in the Green River case since 1982. However, investigators were unable to link him to the murders at that time. Later advances in DNA profiling allowed investigators to definitely link Ridgway to the murders, and he was arrested on November 30th of 2001 as he was leaving the Kenworth truck factory where he worked in Renton, Washington, as part of a plea bargain wherein he agreed to disclose the locations of still missing women. He was spared the death penalty and received a sentence of life imprisonment without a possibility of parole. His early life, he was born on February 18th of 49, Salt Lake City, Utah, the second of 3 sons to Thomas Mary Ridgway. His childhood was somewhat troubled. Relatives later described his mother as a domineering woman who inflicted corporal punishment upon her sons for minor offenses. Ridgway himself would later tell defense psychologists that as an adolescent, he had conflicting feelings of anger and sexual attraction towards his mother and fantasized about killing her. Ridgway's father, whose marriage to Ridgway's mother was volatile, worked as a bus driver and often complained about the presence of sex workers on his route. Ridgway, who is dyslexic, was held back a year in high school and exhibited an IQ recorded as being in the low 80s. When he was 16, Ridgway lured a 6-year-old boy into the woodland, stabbed him through the ribs into his liver. The boy managed to survive the attack. His adult life in 1982, Ridgway graduated from Thai High School in '69 and married his 19-year-old high school sweetheart, Claudia Craig. He joined the United States Navy and was deployed to Vietnam, where he served on board a supply ship and saw combat. During his time in the military, Ridgway had frequent sexual intercourse with sex workers and contracted gonorrhea. Although Craig was angered by this, he continued this activity without protection. His marriage to Craig ended within a year. When questioned about Ridgway after his arrest, friends and family described him as a friendly but strange. His first two marriages resulted in divorce because of his infidelities by both partners. His second wife, Marcia Winslow, claimed that he had placed her in a chokehold. Ridgway became religious during his second marriage, proselytizing door to door, reading the Bible aloud at work and at home, and insisting that his wife follow the strict teachings of their pastor. He would also frequently cry after reading the Bible or hearing sermons. Despite his beliefs, Ridgway continued to solicit the services of sex workers and asked his wife to participate in sex in public or inappropriate places, sometimes even in areas where his victims' bodies were later discovered. According to women in his life, Ridgway had an insatiable sexual appetite. His 3 ex-wives and several ex-girlfriends reported that he demanded sex from them several times a day. Often he would want to have sex in public areas or in the woods. Ridgway admitted to having fixations with sex workers within whom he loved-hate relationships, frequently complained about their presence in the neighborhood, but he would also take advantage of their services regularly. In a statement read at his plea hearing, Ridgway said he hated prostitutes, did not want to pay them for sex. Some have speculated that Ridgway was torn between his lusts and his staunch religious beliefs. With his second wife, Marcia Ridgway, had a son. His murders throughout the 90s, Ridgway is believed to have murdered at least 71 teenage girls and women near Seattle and Tacoma, Washington. In court statements, Ridgway later reported that he had killed so many that he lost count. A majority of the murders occurred between 1982 and '84. The victims were believed to be either sex workers or runaways whom he picked up along Pacific Highway South. Ridgway sometimes showed the women a picture of his son to trick them into trusting him. They would engage in sexual activity, and after minutes of intercourse from behind, Ridgway would wrap his forearm around the front of their necks and use the other arm to pull back as tightly as he could, strangling them. He killed most victims in his home, his truck, or a secluded area. Most of their bodies were dumped in wooded areas around the Green River, Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, and other dump sites within South King County. There was also 2 confirmed and another 2 suspected victims found in Portland, Oregon area. Bodies were often left in clusters, sometimes posed, usually nude. He would sometimes return to the victims' bodies and engage in necrophilia with their bodies. Ridgway later explained that he did not find necrophilia more sexually satisfying. By having sex with a deceased reduced his need to obtain a living victim and thus limited his exposure being caught. Ridgway occasionally contaminated the dump sites with gum, cigarettes, and written materials belonging to others. And he even transported a few victims' remains across state lines into Oregon to confuse the police. His first known victims were between 82 and 84. The body of the first victim was found in July of 82. The unique kind of spray paint was found on the clothing wrapped around the victim's neck, but the paint was not tested for 20 years. And that was the first one. And if it had been tested at the time, it would have been easier to link the murder to Ridgway. After 4 more victims were found, the King County Sheriffs formed Green River Task Force to investigate murders. Task Force members included Robert Keppel and Dave Renchard, who periodically interviewed incarcerated serial killer Ted Bundy in 1984. Bundy offered his opinion on psychology, motivations, and behavior of a killer. He suggested the killer was revisiting the dump sites to have sex with his victims, which turned out to be accurate. And if police found a fresh grave, they should stake it out, wait for him to come back. Also contributing to the investigation was FBI Special Agent John E. Douglas, who developed a profile of the suspect. Ridgway was arrested in 1982. In 2001, on charges related to prostitution, he became a suspect in Green River killings. In 1983, when 18-year-old Marie Mallard disappeared, her boyfriend and her pimp later found a truck in front of Ridgway's house, which they thought was the same one she had boarded that day she went missing. Ridgway was interviewed in conjunction with the event. The police received several other tips that mentioned him. In 1984, he passed the polygraph test. 1985-2001, marriage to Judith Mawson, arrest for murder. Around 1985, Ridgway began dating Judith, who became his third wife in 1988. Mawson claimed in a 2010 television interview around 1985, Ridgway began dating Judith Mawson, who became his third wife in 1988, claimed that when she moved into his house while they were dating, there was no carpet. Detectives later told her he had probably wrapped a body in the carpet. In the same interview, she described how he could leave for work early in the morning some days and ostensibly for the overtime pay. Mawson speculated that he must have committed some of the murders while supposedly working these early morning shifts. He claimed that she had not suspected Ridgway of crimes before she was contracted by authorities in 1987 and had not even heard of the Green River Killer before that time. In April of 1987, police took hair and saliva samples from Ridgway. The samples collected were later subject to DNA profiling, providing the evidence for his arrest warrant. On November 30th, 2001, he was at the Kenworth Truck Factory where he worked as a spray painter. When police arrived to arrest him, the 4 victims named in the original indictment were Marcia Chapman, Opal Mills, Cynthia Hines, and Carol Ann Christensen. 3 more victims, Wendy Cofferfield, Deborah Bonner, and Deborah Estes, were added to the indictment after the forensic scientists identified microscopic spray paint spheres as a specific brand and composition of paint used at the Kenworth factory during the time when these victims were killed. Plea bargain, confession, sentencing. Early in 2003, Seattle Television News reported that Ridgway had been moved from maximum security cell to King County Jail to an Airway Heights minimum medium security level tank. Other news reports stated that his lawyers, led by Anthony Savage, were closing plea bargain that would spare him the death penalty in return for his confession to a number of the Green River murders. November of 2003, Ridgway entered a guilty plea to 48 charges of aggravated first-degree murder as a part of the plea bargain that would spare him execution in exchange for his cooperation in locating the remains of his victim and providing other details. In this statement, accompanied by his guilty plea, Ridgway explained that he had killed all his victims inside King County, Washington, and that he had transported and dumped the remains of 2 women near Portland to confuse the police. Deputy Prosecutor Jeffrey Bard noted that that the deal contained the names of 41 victims who would not be the subject of State versus Ridgway if it were not for the plea agreement. King County Prosecuting Attorney Norm Melling explained his decision to make the deal. We could have gone forward with the 7 counts, but that is all we could have ever hoped to solve. At the end of that trial, whatever the outcome there would be, would have been lingering doubts about the rest of these crimes. This agreement was the avenue to the truth, and in the end, the search for the truth is still why we have criminal justice system. Gary Ridgway does not deserve our mercy. He does not deserve to live. The mercy provided by today's resolution is directed not at Ridgway, but towards the families who have suffered so much. On December 18, 2003, King County Superior Court Judge Richard A. Jones sentenced Ridgway to 48 life sentences without the possibility of parole to be served consecutively. He was also sentenced to an additional 10 years for tampering with evidence for each of the 48 victims, adding 480 years to his 48 life sentences. Later, he was given another life sentence after the remains of his 49th victim were found. Ridgway led prosecutors to 3 bodies in 2003. August 16th in that year, the remains of a 16-year-old girl found near Enumclaw, Washington, 40 feet from State Route 410, were pronounced as belonging to Pam Arnett Avant, who had been believed to be a victim of the Green River Killer. The remains of Mary Mevlick and April Bedham were found in September 2003. The Associated Press in 2005 reported that a weekend hiker found the skull of one of the women Ridgway admitted murdering and his 2003 plea bargain with King County prosecutors. Skull of another victim, Tracy Winston, who was 19 when she disappeared from Northgate Mall on September 12th of 83, was found on November 20th, 2005 by a man hiking in the woods near wooded area near Highway 18 in Issaquah, southeast of Seattle. This was the first to lead to Ridgway's 49th life sentence. 2023 remains were discovered in 1985 and known as Bones. 17 were identified as belonging to 15-year-old Lori Ann Rezapanik, who was last seen by her family in Lewis County, Washington in November of 82. Ridgway confessed to more confirmed murders than any other American serial killer. Over a period of 5 months, police and prosecutor interviews, he confessed 48 murders, 42 of which were on the police list of probable Green River Killer victims. On February 9th of 2004, county prosecutors began to release the videotape records of Ridgway's confession. Incarceration: Ridgway was placed in solitary confinement at Washington State Penitentiary in Walla Walla in January 2004. On May 14, 2015, he was transferred to the USP Florence High, a high-security federal prison east of Cannon City, Colorado. In September 2015, after a public outcry and discussion with Governor Jay Inslee, Corrections Secretary Bernie Warner announced that Ridgway would be transferred back to Washington to be easily accessible for open murder investigations. December of 25, Tacoma radio station Kiro FM reported on 5 anonymous sources that Ridgway was receiving end-of-life care in prison. However, speaking to Fox 13 Seattle, Director of the Department of Corrections said those allegations were inaccurate and said that nothing has changed in Ridgway's existing health conditions. Another official from DOC refuted these claims in request for comment by U.S. Weekly, adding that despite Ridgway's health issues, he is not under hospice care. And it's got a list of all the names of the people he murdered in the years. And so that's a little bit on that crazy guy. Let's go through the chat here. Also, somebody bought a bottle of hot sauce last resort bowl with her pick and name on, and the lady brought it back. Got attacked at home. I wouldn't doubt it. I am a simple man. I see Russ Reynolds from Beyond Life Paranormal Podcast. Posted a video. I clicked the video. Awesome. Thanks, Granzer. I hope you had a good New Year. He tortured the family cat. Yeah, he did weird stuff. Kemper did. I got kicked out. Podcast I was talking about Ed Kemper. He tortured a cat and did weird things with his sister's dolls. Oh yeah, he should do stuff on lesser known killers. Yeah, I'll be doing some more serial killer episodes. Now that we're back after taking a little break, I'll be doing more. We're gonna recap. We talked about Ed Kemper, a notorious serial killer. Eileen Wormos, who is no longer living. She was lethal injected. And then Gary Ridgway. I mean, you look at the eyes on these guys, if you actually look at them, it's like, especially when you have abilities and stuff and you can read people, you can see there's no remorse or no soul there. And even her eyes are all black. I mean, she hated people. Same with him. He's even got empty eyes too as well. And if you notice, there's like a pattern with them. Like I was saying earlier about they all had rough childhoods with their parents and stuff like that. So when you see a lot of that, it starts weighing on a person, and then they also become the weird person and all kinds of stuff. So, we are going to get ready to wrap up here. Again, I'm going to post some events that we're going to be at. My buddy Ken 10, we're going to be down there investigating the Glenn House with him for his birthday on January 17th. Us, Ken 10 Paranormal, Bluff City Paranormal. It's going to be an awesome night. First time going to the Glenn House. I've heard so much about it here in Cape Girardeau. My buddy Jimmy from Outlaw Paranormal, he's filmed there, and they've gotten some good activity, which you can actually check out that video on Scare Network TV from the Glenn House that Outlaw Paranormal did. And they had a singer with them. He's known as the Missouri Rebel. He was also in there with them too. Our next one we got coming up in April. Jeanette, you might want to check this one out. We're going to be in Ohio. We are going to Mortuary Manor. Tickets are starting at $10 a person. You can find the information at Eclipse Paranormal, which will take you to their Eventbrite. There is two different styles of tickets. There's the VIP tickets, which you get to investigate with us, my dad and I, cousins of the Warrens. You can also general admission tickets if you want to investigate at your own pace. So you got two choices there. So we will be out there. Check out eclipseparanormal.com. Their website, all the info is on there. And you'll be able to come see us and hang out with us. So be sure to come check us out there. I know we've got September, we've got Bordertown Paracon that we're going to be at again in Caney, Kansas. October, we are going to be back at Rock Island Paracon. And we are going to be in Indiana. That's also confirmed. Legends and Squatches. Ken 10 Paranormal is supposed to have a Paracon we are going to be at. We are probably going to be at Smoky Mountain Terror this year. We don't know yet. We're waiting to see. Another announcement I'm going to make. We are also expanding our research. This has been in the works for a little while. I'm putting together another team. We are going to be doing missing persons cases using paranormal communication for missing persons. The new group's name is called Hope Trackers, and you will be seeing the logo pop up very soon. Working on a website. I've already got several members on the team already. Thanks, Granzer. My New Year's was good. Went out and did some deer hunting with some family, and went out to my cousins on New Year's and went out deer hunting out there with my cousin Brad. And so it was pretty good. Had to do 2 paranormal investigations, 2 residential cases, and had to do a couple. They both ended up resulting in home cleansing. So, yeah. So be sure to check that out. We're going to be working on that. I've got several members already in my team. How much time you got? Was going to ask you the year 25 in review. Yeah, I mean, I got a few minutes yet. What I've learned in 2005, watch your back in the paranormal field. If you're going to work with somebody, make sure you trust them first. Because what I've learned in 2005, there's people out there because of who I'm related to, because I'm well known in the field. They just want to use your name to gain connections, so then they can run off with your name and your fortune and everything you did for them and turn around and stick the knife in your back. So it's like the post I put out. We're only working with teams that support us, that we trust, because we're not dealing with the drama in 26. That's one thing I've learned there. Yep, backstabbing and bullies. We're not doing it anymore. We're done with it. 26 is the year to forgive and forget, and that's what we're doing. We're moving forward with us. We've got all our projects in the works. I've got 3 movies in the works, the book coming out, and so we're focusing on us and helping people and working with teams that support us. Russell, for 26, you plan on staying in your state? Yeah, we're gonna stay. We're gonna stay in Missouri, but we're still traveling. We're still gonna travel and do it out of state. Wherever it takes us, we're gonna go. If people need us, we're gonna be there. I mean, we're still gonna do some events and stuff for people, like my friend Jen that's putting this one on. We're doing a couple her Paracon too. So, but I mean, we're kind of we're doing stuff with Cold Spotters. We got Cold Spotters Texas. We're going to be investigating with this year. So we've got a lot of stuff in the works, and our schedule's starting to fill up already. We're starting to get booked, so it's going to be a pretty busy year for us, especially with the missing person stuff that we're doing now too. We've already been working a missing persons case, so I've got well-trained mediums in the group already, investigators, researchers already. So we're expanding. We may dive into cryptid researching too as well. We got invited by a couple of cryptid researchers to go out with them. They want to try some paranormal equipment out, going after Sasquatch and stuff. So my friend still needs help, but a lot is going on right now. She will get with you. Yeah, because I've already got Jeanette, tell her I've already got a team that's waiting for her. So I've got her help, but she needs to get a hold of me ASAP so I can get that team up there. So that is an incredible rabbit hole, missing persons. Yep. I was in another group we started, and then it kind of just faded away. So I'm like, might as well start my own and start also working missing persons here in Missouri and stuff. And we've been working on a missing veteran here in Missouri that disappeared like 3 years ago. He had just up and left one day. He had severe PTSD, left his car, left all his belongings at his apartment, was seen hiking, and a sheriff did a wellness check on him. Everything was fine. He had left, and one of the sheriffs gave him a ride to this campground, which was like a 45-mile track from where he lived. And the campground was closed at that time of year, so that was where he was last seen. He just vanished. So I was able to find the map of his trail, where he went, stuff like that. And we've been doing a lot of doing Estes with it and trying to contact his spirit and stuff. And when the weather gets better, we're going to actually go out where he was last found and do some spirit communication down there and see if we can get him to come forward and try to find out and put some closure for his family. From what my psychics and stuff were picking up, it's a pretty bad deal. So, and a lot of it we're going to keep confidential right now. So, for family, but that's what we're up to. Russell, you have any takes on missing persons, but that linked to possible killed by Sasquatch? I've seen. Yeah, I mean, but them woods out there, especially like around Appalachia, Smoky Mountains, that's all crazy out there and I mean, you got mountain lions like Montana where a lot of people go missing, and mountain lions will take their food and drag it up in trees. So it's nothing for them to take a human being If they can take a deer down and take a deer and drag it up in a tree, they can do a human being as well. And and they're feisty little things. And mountain lions, they'll stalk you. I guess it maybe happens more than we'd like to know. Yeah, it does. Yeah, that's a shame, Jeanette. The media, they're they take that crap just for clickbait so they can promote themselves. Man, it's like my family are always in the media. I mean, look when Dan Rivera passed away. That flew through the media like wildfire. Oh, Annabelle did it. Annabelle didn't do nothing. And right away, the media wants to twist it around that Annabelle did it. Oh, you play with Annabelle, this is what happens. I mean, it's. Oh, that was it. It was Untold Radio. Barnaby Jones is a host, and they touched upon feral humans, and I mentioned to them about the story you discussed. Oh, okay. Awesome. Mine was on the news in Florida at the same time, too. Yeah, I bet. Once they get their hands on shit, they just run with it. That's their problem. And they do it for their clickbait so they can gain their views and their monetization. And I gave you a shout out, and Barnaby Jones said, "Oh wow, I never heard of those stories." Told him, "Yeah, it was a wild topic, and that you sort of deep dive into it." Yeah, and I just actually, Granzer, I just found out that the Ozark Mountains here in South Missouri and Arkansas has feral people living in it. There's feral people down there that have been spotted as well. I was chased by a feral human. They nearly bit me. Survivor of feral human. But yeah, I was reading on that too. I started researching that and found feral humans living down in the Ozarks and the Ozark Mountains down there, and they've got them caves down there, but all the way through Springfield, Missouri, and south, they got all kinds of cave systems down there. Branson's got them, and I mean, I've been in some of those Ozark Mountains down there, and there's a lot of dense woods back in there. So I want to say that Barnaby Jones was interviewing a person about Sasquatch, maybe around Kentucky. I guess mentioned about feral people. Was it was his name Squatch Man? Go by the name of Squatch Man? Hills have eyes, kind of stuff. Yeah, because I think Squatch Man lives down around by Kentucky. Which I know Squatch Man personally. And yeah, you hear a lot about it. I'm going to try to deep dive some more into the feral people of the Ozark Mountains, and I'll do an episode on that one too. But I don't know if it was Squatch Man. I can't recall, but I know Barnaby has worked or know his guests well. Okay. I know Squatch Man, he goes out in them woods and he can get them Sasquatches going. When we were all at Rock Island, they did a campfire out in the woods, and he went out there to get Sasquatch going in Illinois. So he doesn't even call them Bigfoot. He calls them forest people, is what he calls them. But okay, yeah, just have him reach out to me. I know I believe it's March 7th. My dad and I are gonna be on a podcast that night. So I'll be posting a link up for that. We will be on Eternal Wolfpack Paranormal's podcast, which is on the All Access TV network. Yep, it'll be on a Sunday night. Head-On seemed to get really uncomfortable when the feral humans were brought up. I ran with it and really got interested in the topic. Oh, nice. So yeah, I'll be posting the link for that when we're on there. But we're gonna go ahead and wrap up because I gotta get up early and go to work in the morning. I'm on day shift for tomorrow, and then I'm back on the night shift again. So we are gonna be back on our regular time on Saturdays now, unless I get called out for an investigation. So we will see you all next week, same time, same channel. Remember, if you're being bullied in the paranormal field, you have a voice. Feel free to speak out. If you need someone to talk to, reach out to us teams. We'll be happy to listen to you. So with that being said, everybody have a good night. God bless. And we will see you next Saturday. Same time, same channel. So thank you all for tuning in tonight for Season 3, Episode 1. And see you again next week. You guys have a good night too. Granzer, Jeanette, Petra, if you're still watching. Everybody else who's viewing, all 5 of you that hung in. Have a good night.